You were ready.
My name's Emma. My topic is gun control, and my proposition is that increased gun control laws would decrease the number of mass shootings. And by gun control specifically, I mean it's necessary to implement stronger background checks and to outlaw certain types of guns. I'll be talking about how easy it is for people to access guns. I'll be talking about how other countries have had success in gun control, and the two aspects of gun control that would help the most, again, implementing background checks that were stronger and outlawing certain weapons. So my first secondary claim is accessing guns is too easy. It's easier to purchase a gun in America than it is to obtain a driver's license. So in Florida, to buy a gun, you do not need a permit, you do not need a gun license, and once you buy it, you do not need to register it. A journalist from GQ put it to a test named Alex Hannaford. He reported, "I am only in the shop for 40 minutes and the criminal record check via computer lasts 5 of those. On a form headed firearms transaction record, I tick the boxes that say I am not addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, or narcotic, and that I haven't been adjudicated mentally defective. The information I've given isn't verified. 10 minutes later, I walk out of Academy with a new 9mm semi-automatic gun, plus cleaning kit and holster. I have only ever shot a real firearm once before at a shooting range years ago with someone who knew what they were doing. Sitting back in my car, staring at the gun in the black plastic bag, I realized I have no idea how to even load it." So that just goes to show how easy it really is and how you don't have to have any background knowledge about guns. It's not even checked if the things that you are saying in the background check, if you are mentally stable or have a drug addiction or anything like that. Again, it was shown when Andy Campbell of the HuffPost reported similarly when he walked out of a gun shop in Orlando with an AR-15 after only 38 minutes of being there. So there are some places that require a few days after asking or trying to get a gun, but in some places you can simply just walk out within the hour with a gun, and that's a problem. A woman named Elizabeth Warren, in her book A Fighting Chance, stated, "We lose 8 children and teenagers to gun violence every day. If a mysterious virus suddenly started killing 8 of our children every day, America would mobilize teams of doctors and public health officials. We would move heaven and earth until we found a way to protect our children, but not with gun violence." And I don't know why that is. I think it's because guns are a lot more politically involved. But I think that she has a good point that it should just be viewed as something that's killing our children. So my second secondary claim is that gun control in other countries has eliminated the occurrence of mass shootings. So in Australia, there was a man named Martin Bryant who was 28. He was eating his lunch in Broad Arrow Cafe, and he came in with a large bulking tennis bag. After he finished his meal, he unloaded an AR-15 from the bag and shot down 12 of the customers in the cafe, and then proceeded to the gift shop next door and murdered 8 more people, and then later shot a mother who was running with her 2 children. And within weeks, the elected officials of Australia banned semi-automatics and other military-style weapons, and the results of this were that not a single mass shooting has occurred since then. Again, in the United Kingdom, a guy named Thomas Hamilton shot 16 people, mostly kids, including 1 teacher in an elementary school. And after that occurred, the United Kingdom banned semi-automatics, and again, no mass shootings have occurred since then. David from Daily Beast and a CNN contributor stated, "American children under age 15 were 9 times more likely to die of a gun accident than children in other advanced, wealthy countries." So we specifically as Americans have this problem, and other countries have shown us how it can be done. So we should follow their example. My last secondary claim is that implementing stronger background checks would help decrease the probability of mass shootings happening. So as said by the guy who was talking about going in and getting the gun and only having to do a background check on the computer for like 5 minutes, background checks sometimes only go as far as self-reporting, And if somebody wanted to commit a mass shooting, why would they report that they have these mental illnesses or drug addictions? They wouldn't, and they don't even check it, which is a problem. A majority of those committing mass shootings are later discovered to have had mental illnesses that were undocumented, like Stephen Paddock, the one who did the Las Vegas Strip shooting. It was later discovered that he had gambling problems and other things involved with gambling that are usually signs of mental illness. Outlawing certain assault weapons, this is my last secondary thing. Outlawing certain assault weapons would help prevent mass shootings. So the AR-15 that was used in the Australia one, that was in the cafe and gift shop, and the same AR-15 was used in the Stoneman Douglas High School, Florida shooting. These types of guns cause such extreme trauma that isn't really necessary in everyday life. Like, you wouldn't need it for what people might need a gun for, that they're buying it if it's just for a sense of safety or hunting or anything like that. The AR-15 is so strong that if it hits you anywhere in the torso area, it's gonna cause such trauma that you have no chance. If it's even like in your hip, there's just gonna be so much trauma that you're basically screwed. So I don't see any reason for these weapons to be available anyways. In conclusion, if we followed the example of other countries and strengthened gun control laws by requiring more extensive background checks and banning semi-automatic and military-style guns, mass shootings would be better prevented. Thank you.
Okay, the proposition's clearly stated. You've got a definition of what it is you're talking about concerning gun control at the beginning of the speech. There's a preview that's easy to follow. There's definitely controversy on this. I don't think this would be a hard one to establish that there's a dispute on this particular point. I thought you gave us a reasonable amount of background information so that we know why it is that we're listening to this argument. The first point, in fact, kind of contributes to that. You do depend on a couple of examples here. The criminal check, for instance, that is being conducted in Florida, I assume that that's some kind of federal criminal records computer check that's going on there. The fact that other things are just checked off on the list, I think that's a good illustration about what people would say are loopholes in the laws concerning background checks. That's fine. Although later on, you did mention, I think toward the end of the speech, that some of the people who committed these crimes they had undiagnosed mental illnesses, so I don't even know exactly how a background check's going to find an undiagnosed mental illness. That's an inconsistency in the argument, but I think that the idea that that you're just self-reporting information, and it's unlikely that somebody would self-report if they were disturbed, that makes some sense. The information on the second point relies primarily on examples. You've got the Australia example, which I know when that happened. I don't know if you mentioned when it happened. The example that you mentioned in Great Britain, I think we need a little bit more context on the same kind of thing that it seems to suggest happened in Australia, happened here, and I don't know that the conditions were the same, so I think probably need to give us a little bit more context on that. The notion that mass shootings don't happen in Great Britain, I think that that's perhaps a little problematic, but you could give us a source citation that talks about how that has been, subsequent to the passage of the legislation, that's been the case. You don't really, you cite the example, but don't necessarily give us a source on that. With the Australia, I thought they did a little bit better job at presenting that information. And then on the third point, you did suggest that stronger background checks would make a difference. Like I said, I think you do need to have a little bit more information about how a background check is going to discover some of this kind of information. You know, just from a technical point of view, because medical records are sealed under privacy laws, I'm not exactly sure how that would work. You'd have to create some kind of system to address that. I don't know what that system would entail. You're using primarily examples to illustrate your point. I think you could use a little bit more statistical information, and the opinions that you are using tend to be from reporters in the field talking about their own experience, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is, of course, a fairly narrow observation of their particular experience, and I think you could find some other information that talks about this from a broader perspective. I thought it was well organized. The points are connected to each other, and I can see where you're going, and I can see the argument that you're making developing clearly. So that's what we're looking for. Thank you.